G'day guys, this is on B6 and some of the issues with potential toxicity, potential risk factors and stuff like that. So there are cases where the wrong type of B6 can be a problem. There's also a methylation related issue. There's also a conversion relation issue. This is sort of a reason from somebody leaving me a comment and sort of mentioning that they had a bit of an issue, and I sort of looked at it, and then once they sort of made it clear that they were using the inactive form of B6, then that can bioaccumulate. That can be a bit of a problem, and it can actually cause like a B6 deficiency. Now, if you've got oxalate dumping and you're burning through B6 that you're actually getting from the diet, and then you've got this sort of accumulation type effect, it can really gummy up the works in the body, which can be a problem, and then create things like, people seem to get all sorts of symptoms because, B6 is also required for, for a lot of the neurotransmitters like serotonin. So you can become sort of slightly have an elevated dopamine and the reduction in serotonin, and that can sort of have an effect on your sleep. So there can be a whole lot of funny, strange sort of symptoms that can arise from these sort of things. Then people that have got methylation, their primaries, they may be burning through due to certain issues that their body's dealing with. They may end up burning through their B6 levels, and then inappropriate supplements, oxalate dumping. There can be a lot of intertwining factors based on people's genetic differences and all these other factors that can play up. It's the reason why the actual B6 that I do recommend is the active form, and you don't get these problems. Now, the majority of commercial stuff out there, unfortunately, are not the active form, and this is where the problem arises. And let me just share my screen. Now, we're not going to cover the whole, people can read it at their own. This is a sort of a toxicology in vitro study done in the Netherlands. So it's talking about neuropathy. So you can actually get like neuropathy symptoms and all sorts of other things like that. So vitamin B6 paradox, supplementation with high concentrations of pyridoxine leads to decreased vitamin 6 function, obviously, because you also need riboflavin to convert the non-active form to the active form, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So in order to convert it to the active form, you basically need to get enough riboflavin. Now, most of carnivores should be getting sufficient amounts of riboflavin from their diet, from both meat, eggs, and dairy products. So there shouldn't be a really issue, but it's really people that are supplementing for, maybe in case of neurotransmitters, they may have some issues there that they're dealing with. It could be in the case of dealing with oxalate dumping in particular. It does burn through quite a bit of B6, and it is required to basically try and bring down, mitigate the symptoms of oxalate symptoms of oxalate dumping. So you've got all these sort of complications. Now, this is not to, these are the sort of, one of the general types of supplements that you'll get out there, and it'll have this pyroxidine, HCI. Okay, this is the stuff we don't want. This is sort of in the majority of popular. This is sort of the inactive form. Okay, that's the problem. This is the one we want, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So that's the one we want. It's one of the, look, there are other sort of B6 type you know, sort of enzymatic cofactors and stuff like that. So they do vary a bit, but this is one of the major ones, the most active form. And this is in this one, and it's also in the Paradise supplements as well. There is on this the Now one as well, and the Life Extension one as well. So as long as it's P5P or paradoxal 5-phosphate, that's the active form, that's fine. And that's what this one has, which I've talked about, and it's the one that I've also recommended, 50 milligrams. So that's to deal with oxalate dumping and stuff like that. Now, we'll just go, they pretty much, in the case of studies of neurotoxicity, differences of B6 tested, and they looked at cells were exposed. So they actually, you know, the different types, paradoxine, paradoxamine, you know, so paradoxal 5-phosphate, or they mean both these, or paradoxamine 5-phosphate. It's pretty much the same. It's just different names, different naming conventions. So just keep that in mind. So in that regard. And we will go down here. Different shapes. So yeah, it's a bit of a difference in regards. So as you can see right here, so there you've actually got oxygen and hydrogen, where you've got here oxygen, you know, phosphate, oxygen 3, hydrogen 2, so it's slightly different. Now, we're not going to go into that, so we'll just go all the way down. As you can see here, cell death. So that's the control, obviously, that have done nothing to it. This is Triton X, which is something that definitely causes 100% cell death. Okay, so they're actually looking at the effects in response to something, an intervention that can, you know, how well do these function? As you can see in this one, pretty much all these other ones. So fairly high, where this one here, these ones are fairly low, so we don't see any problems, which is the active forms. So I'm not going to go through that. People can read it at their own leisure. Oops. So that's they keep on changing the damn, you know, this is one thing that I found frustrating about this study. So the paradox in paradoxal is pretty much, this is what it is. And which is in the general supplements. We'll just go to so in the last decade, various cases of vitamin B6 induced polyneuropathy have been reported. So, people getting at the extremities, people chronically taking vitamin B6 supplements reported complaints just pain in the extremities and muscle weakness. They're taking these form, the stock standard sort of stuff, not the active form. And it started to build up in their system. Not enough. And a lot of people, because they're not eating enough animal foods, they're not getting enough riboflavin to do the conversion. So as a consequence, of under eating animal foods, if they're taking these sort of supplements, and I know a lot of people out there, a lot through the plant-based community, non-plant-based, it probably affects them far more. But there's a lot of people that may not be getting enough and are not doing the conversion, or maybe they've got a methylation issue. And so what's happening is their methylation pathways are hogging up all the riboflavin, using it. Remember the activation of bringing down homocysteine, that other pathway, the primary methylation pathway. So that could be using a lot of it. Then the sort of conversion that's required, riboflavin again for the folate pathway, again, to convert folate to active folate, you've got that part as well. So you've got riboflavin being used for a lot of key critical parts of methylation, and certain other playing a cofactor role in a number of other things. Add to that certain issues that you're dealing with, detoxing, plus potentially oxalate on top of that. Depending on people's genetic detox pathways and how they're going to use that sort of stuff. There's a lot of variables there to unpack. I'm not going to unpack it in this video, try to keep it as short as possible. But you can understand how this can be a problem, and this is the reason why I only recommend the active form. Okay, something like this. As long as it's got the active form, I'm fine with it. And that's 50 milligrams, and it's the active form, so it's going to be less problems. And they say complaints were reversed as they faded away after stopping the supplement. Most often these complaints were seen when taking mega doses greater than 50 milligrams a day. Got it? Of vitamin B6 for a longer period of time. However, they talk about that they've actually found for some other people smaller amounts, but this is more, certain complaints, but not these sort of neuropathy, the key things. Now that could be associated, so we're going to ignore that completely. Up until now, the mechanism of B6 induced polyneuropathy is still unknown, making it difficult to give well substantiated advice, obviously. So 6 different vitamin I's of B6 exist, primarily pyridoxine, pyridoxal, pyridoxamine, and their phosphorylated derivatives. Now that's the type we want, phosphorylated derivatives, pyridoxine phosphate, pyridoxal phosphate, and pyridoxamine phosphate. Now they're all the type of 5P5P types, okay, because they've been phosphorylated, pyridoxal phosphate, pyridoxal 5-phosphate is the most active form of B6. Pyridoxal phosphate is well known coenzyme in a wide variety of enzymatic reactions. That's what we want, because it's going to be used. Okay, so we do not want the pyridox, that on there, the unphosphorylated pyridoxine or pyridoxal, pretty much more or less the same. They're in inactive forms, and that's the stuff you find in most commercial B6 supplements. That's the problem. They bioaccumulate and can create some of these paradoxical issues in people, especially if people are under eating, as I said, riboflavin and mega dosing above 50 milligrams. but I prefer people get the active form. It's only a few. It doesn't cost a lot, massive amounts in terms of difference. The majority of these forms as well, which is the other problem that I find with them, they're all 100 milligrams. They're the inactive form. They're all 100 milligrams, which I find very problematic in that regard. Yes, they are cheap, as you can see in comparison. So that's 110 tablets. This one here has only got 30. So as you can see, you're getting about, it's 3 times equivalent, 3 times more expensive in a sense. But you get what you pay for, pretty much. So if you're going to use a supplemental form to deal with, issues like it may be neurotransmitters, that you may have issues and that you may require, B6, or you've got severe, oxalate dumping and you need it for that purpose, get the active form. Do not skimp unless it's P5P, give it a miss. We want the actual active form to deal with these things, and we don't want any of the complications that come, potentially insomnia, potentially neuropathy, or tingling at the extremities, things like that. We don't want that sort of stuff. So we've got to be careful. And because in our community, there's because of past, especially a lot of people that have come from, they don't come to the carnivore diet immediately from a SAD diet, unfortunately. The majority of people will go through the low carb, vegan, vegetarian sort of world. They will consume quite a lot of oxalate rich foods, including a lot of things like almonds and whatever else. And by the time they get to a carnivore diet, they realize the other stuff isn't working. That's the popular crap out there. They will have to endure some level of oxalate dumping, which is, a problem. We're using an active form of B6 to deal with it. Unfortunately, a lot of people out there are not actually letting people know. And in my previous video, I didn't actually explain it thoroughly. I talk about the active form, but I say, get this supplement or get these B vitamins because I've got the active form, the Paradise ones that I recommend. But I haven't made it clear exactly why, all those details. So, I need to basically remind myself that most people are unaware of the active form and not active form and what they do and some variations and stuff like that. I've got another video coming up which will touch on some of these things and clarify even the type of pantothenic acid that can be helpful for the the hair and stuff. I think I mentioned about the regrowth, and there was another part about putting a bit of color back in as well. Maybe I should buy some. Probably need it with my genetics. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. I usually use mine for indiscretions. Well, that's true. So that's pretty much it, guys. It's just to cover this issue, because there's going to be a lot of people out there in the low carb, in the keto, in the carnivore community that may have issues with oxalate, and most people, and there will be some of the people that are more aware of that, or slowly but surely the idea of you need B6 to deal with breaking down oxalate. Well, what type of B6? And we need to get the message. It's got to be the active form. Sorry, but you got to pay a bit more to get the active form, so you have far less issues. Anyway, that's it. See yous.